The Uniform Commercial Code and your birth certificate. Introduction to the UCC and its ecclesiastical roots. The Uniform Commercial Code, UCC, is a foundational legal framework that governs commercial transactions across the 50 United States. Originally conceived to unify and standardize laws governing commerce, the UCC is widely regarded as the Bible of business. What is lesser known, however, is that its structural basis derives from Vatican canon law, inherited from Roman ecclesiastical legal traditions. This historical linkage ties commercial law not only to secular institutions but also to ecclesiastical frameworks of governance and control. The concept of birthing and its commercial parallel. To better understand how this applies to individuals, consider the word birth, which refers to the docking of a ship at a port. Under maritime or admiralty law, a domain that overlaps with the UCC, when a ship arrives at its berth, the captain must submit a certificate of manifest listing all cargo and passengers. Similarly, when a human is born, emerging from their mother's waters, they are metaphorically treated as cargo arriving through the port of birth. Consequently, a birth certificate functions as a certificate of manifest, identifying the newborn individual as a valuable resource to the state. Birth certificates and national bankruptcy. Following the bankruptcy of the United States in 1933, the government began issuing serialized birth and marriage certificates. These certificates served as warehouse receipts used to collateralize public debt in exchange for credit from the Federal Reserve. Each birth certificate effectively securitized an individual's labor potential, assigning economic value to human lives through their capacity to repay national debt. Human beings as economic assets. Today, people are categorized as human resources, a term reflecting their perceived economic utility. This terminology is evident in the existence of corporate departments known as human resources. Each birth certificate carries a unique red ink number, functioning as a security tracking ID on global exchanges. These numbers facilitate the trading and monetization of human labor and productivity. The role of doctors and government agencies. Doctors act as franchisees of the state and are mandated to forward birth certificates to the Secretary of State. These documents are then transmitted to the Department of Commerce and eventually to international financial institutions such as the International Monetary Fund, IMF. Birth certificates mature into certificates in equity at the age of 18, enabling governments to use them as performance units on international debt obligations. The mechanics of a fraudulent financial system. This process of collateralizing human life without informed consent constitutes a form of fraudulent conversion. Citizens are unknowingly bound to third-party debts, converting them into state-owned assets. Congress, by authorizing this practice, circumvents responsibility by passing financial obligations onto the public, akin to a department store billing a third party for an unsolicited purchase. From Treasury to Federal Reserve, a shift in power. Congress bankrupted the U.S. Treasury and transferred the national gold reserves to the Federal Reserve, a private municipal corporation. Because the available gold was insufficient to settle existing debt, the government entered bankruptcy proceedings. Since then, future debt has been serviced using citizens' property and labor as collateral. Economic manipulation through stimulus and recession. Contemporary financial measures, such as stimulus checks, are promoted as economic relief but often result in currency devaluation. This manipulation steers the public toward a centralized electronic economy, monitored and administered by government agencies, and lays the groundwork for further erosion of financial independence. The 1921 Maternity Act and Federal Birth Registration. The Sheppard-Towner Maternity Act of 1921 established a federal birth registration system under the guise of public health improvements. This act laid the foundation for the federal government's claim over children as assets of the state, operating under the doctrine of parens patriae. The rise of federal authority and social conditioning. By enrolling children in public schools and requiring licenses for various activities, the state conditions individuals to seek governmental permission for everyday life. This paradigm shift replaced the traditional practice of recording births and marriages in family Bibles with a centralized registry system. Full faith and credit in the Pledge of Citizens. President Roosevelt's declaration of bankruptcy in 1933 led to state governors pledging the full faith and credit of their citizens as collateral. This means that citizens' labor and assets underwrite the nation's debt obligations. Consequently, the state assumes authority over all children within its jurisdiction, nullifying parental rights when deemed necessary. Children as trust assets. Children are assets of trusts created by birth certificates, and their value is tracked via Social Security numbers. The birth certificate thereby becomes a financial instrument, turning citizens into economic entities owned by the state. This is evidenced by the term human resources and the existence of corporate departments dedicated to managing people as such. Licensing and the illusion of freedom. By requiring licenses for basic life functions, the state asserts ownership over individual liberty and property. These licenses are instruments of control and are not backed by divine authority but by man-made regulations. The legal significance of capitalization. In legal contexts, names in all capital letters denote fictitious entities created by the government, such as corporations. In contrast, natural persons are signified by names using standard capitalization. Licenses, birth certificates, and ID cards often display names in all caps, indicating that the bearer is a corporate entity subject to government control. Conclusion: reclaiming individual sovereignty. Understanding the legal and financial implications of birth certificates and the UCC unveils the extent of governmental control over individuals. Through informed awareness and lawful strategies, individuals can begin to reclaim their sovereignty, moving from being perceived as state-owned property toward living as free, conscious beings guided by natural law.